It's 3 o'clock. I'm going to be calling the meeting to order. Approval of the minutes for the October 27th meeting. Hopefully, thank you, Sandy, for doing those. Hope you've all had a chance to read them.
Yes.
And if there's a motion and second to accept those minutes,
I'll make a motion to,
accept the
no,
minutes.
no, Sandy.
Shouldn't talk in mouthful. Okay. Are there any errors or omissions?
There's a typo, oh, there's a typo.
Yes, there's a 1 or 2 typos, but
Yeah.
also,
Is that all?
on the paragraph down, hopefully one or both will be able to attend the November 10th meeting, and it should be the November 17th meeting. Just that's today.
Well,
We made the change. We did say,
but at the time that these were taken, we
Yes.
were planning on meeting on the 10th.
yes, you're absolutely right. Okay. If there are no errors or omissions, all those in favor of accepting the minutes of the October 27th meeting, signify by saying aye.
Well,
Yeah,
Yes.
how about I make the motion and Dale second it? We didn't get to make a motion.
Oh, we-
Second.
yeah,
Let's do that. That's a great idea.
Oh, I thought, okay, okay.
Just for her notes.
It's for the record, okay. All those in favor of accepting the minutes of the October 27th meeting, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay. It does not look like we're going to be having anybody here today to help us along. So why don't we just kind of go on, I know some of us have had an opportunity to talk to people. So do we want to start with the skiing and hiking, or do we want to start with the horses? No?
You tell us. That's why you're at that table.
Oh, that's why they pay me the big bucks? Okay, why don't we start with the cross-country skiing and the hiking then? Okay. I had handed out, continuing, in much larger print so we can read it, Kurt Hansen's comments in answers to the questions that I had asked him several weeks back. Just a little bit of background. Kurt Hansen is a part owner of Reagan Mountain in North Conway, and for decades has managed and run all of the trails, the cross-country ski trails in the village of North Conway up through into Vale and into Jackson. Miles and miles of trails, has extensive experience. And there probably were other questions to ask him as well, but he very kindly answered the questions that I had asked. And so I think that probably wants to become part of our record here. One of the things I noticed, and this isn't something that we would be doing as a county, but that equipment to groom those trails is very, very expensive. Leading one to believe that very possibly just running a trail, which we would not be doing, could cost somebody some bucks.
I have a question. His trails that he takes care of
Yes.
traverse many people's properties?
It does. There's no, part of it it goes on land that the town owns. In North Conway, there's a Whitaker Woods up there, which I don't know how many acres that is, but it's significant. But I think most of it is on privately owned land. But this is a trail system that's been in existence for decades, Amanda. So I think, you know, it predates, I don't know how many, maybe even generations. And what they have tried to do over the years, unsuccessfully, I believe, at this point in time, is Jackson, the town of Jackson, has an extensive ski touring network. I mean, it dwarfs what Conway has. And for a long time, they've been trying to connect the tie in the two trails. But I don't think as of this moment they have been successful in doing that, finding that right place to connect. But I don't know if he says in here, I'm not sure he does. Let me just see on the second page, make some reference to something. He says Great Glen has 20 to 25 kilometers of trails on maybe 75 to 100 acres. So as you can see, that's a lot of trails on roughly 100 acres of land. and we'd have more land than that available here, which would give us some idea of the network of trails that we could have. And again, I think we had talked last week, hopefully someone to comment on it, that maybe we connect with other smaller trail networks that abut this and to really expand it as well. Sandy?
It's my understanding that if you are running a motorized trail network, that you must, either a club or the individuals, must have permission from the landowners, either the public or private landowners. And generally, if you're a member of a club, the club takes care of that. And then they take care of usually the grooming.
Thank you very
That's a
much.
requirement.
Yeah. I remember, and I'm gonna be very, very foggy on this, but I think recently, and maybe Ed would have more information, but a few years back, I believe the state passed a law removing any liability from a landowner who allowed people to
Yes.
Yes,
cross
that's
their trail.
true.
So if somebody got injured or hurt, they couldn't come back and run the landowner. The state says, no, you're relieved of any responsibility for that. And I've been told that that really opened up some of these networks, maybe more in Coes County than here, I don't know, greatly. Because now that the landowner didn't have that potential liability, they said, sure, go ahead.
Yeah.
So that's basically true then, okay.
There are some caveats on that, in that law. But if you just permit people to come onto your property as a private landowner, permit people to come on without me having to specifically invite them,
Uh-huh.
all right? If I specifically invite them and/or charge them a fee
Yeah, that's the key.
for use of my property, then I am liable. But if I just passively permit them, once they have a motorized permit, then there's no liability.
Now, why the distinction, Sandy?
Because
What's the basis of that?
if I am requiring people to pay me
Yeah,
to use my property, then it's a business.
so the liability exists.
Yes, that is true.
That's interesting.
If we were to sublet our land to a company, they would have to have liability insurance to cover it.
Okay.
That would be
The,
part of the
What I don't know though is if all you're charging for is parking. Let's say you had a parking lot, a parking area, and you charge a club X number of dollars per event, I'll call it, for their members to go and park. I don't know if that plays into it, if it's only that one little area that you're gonna worry about, or if it's the entire property. That's some of the nuances that I'm not sure of.
And I know some places they get around that by they say, the recommended donation is
Yep.
X number of dollars. And it's a donation, so
Mhm.
therefore it's
And,
not
and,
a
and,
business.
and that differs than you charging somebody then.
Yes.
But I think you'd want a lawyer to check that
You would have to.
interpretation
Yeah,
out too.
yeah.
So.
And the other thing that the county would need to check out is how does that play into current use? Since the forest lands are in current use?
Would that mean a change in the current use?
I don't know.
Dale's shaking
I don't-
his
I
head.
don't
It
think so.
shouldn't change the current use, but
Part of,
part of what you get with current use is because you're getting a lower rate because you're allowing people to go on your property.
well, that's part of it, there's several little pieces.
Categories, yeah.
And you can say, no, I don't want people on my property, and you can have current use at a certain rate.
Mm.
Then you can say, oh yes, people can come on my property and the rate drops.
And I
I
think you
was in
could
the-
say no motorized
Yeah.
vehicles if you want, I think.
Yes, without penalty, because I do at my farm, there's no motorized vehicles.
So it's a myth that you have, if you have your land in the county use, you can't exclude people?
That is a myth.
So you put your land on current use and still exclude people then?
But your rate would be small, your rate would be less.
Your
Your
rate
rate would be
break,
higher.
Higher,
your
yeah.
rate break would be
Well,
higher.
your
Yeah.
discount would be.
Yeah,
Right.
okay, all right.
It's all written into the current
Okay,
law.
question, to those of you who had, as I say, when I talked with Court, I mean, they're north of the village of North Conway and tied into another network. And he certainly had no interest in exploring anything down here. But what he did say in a phone conversation, he says there may be other such similar networks and groups down there in the Wolfboro, Ossipee area. He says they may be interested in looking at this.
Mhm.
When you had talked with people, did you find anybody who was interested in discussing with the county, becoming involved with this or using it? I think
For
that's the key
cross-country
question.
skiing or any?
Cross-country skiing or hike, or
Any use.
snowmobiles or anything else? Did you find anybody who had any interest at all?
I hadn't spoken to people as far as being interested in
Right.
doing something, and it was just kind of, we're discussing this.
Yeah,
Who,
Yeah.
who should I talk to? is
Yeah.
More
Yeah.
of the approach
The-
I had.
yeah.
The two folks, the equestrian folks that I spoke with are interested because they state that there is a need for additional trails for horseback activities, for equine activities. One of the things that has come out, and I guess this is as good a time to introduce it as any, is that they suggest, and some of the literature that I reviewed, suggests that you need what's called a land manager. And that land manager would coordinate and act as the contact point with all of the various trail use groups, the cross-country skiers, the snowmobile clubs, the equestrian clubs, and they could help coordinate trail building and maintenance. Because we're going to need to get all of those groups to work together to maintain any trail.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the ideas that I had was that we take a number of steps. We first figure out, we develop some guidelines, I'll call it. What kind of trail usage we're interested in. Yeah, ATVs, yes or no? Snow machines, yes or no? So we just have something written down.
Mm-hmm.
We find somebody as a, quote, land manager. Would our county forester work as that? I don't know. You know? And then send out word, looking for proposals from these various groups to, if we've got this land, we've got this trails, logging roads. If you would like to, make a proposal to the county, so how you could work with other groups to develop the network.
Almost like a RFP, only it would be proposals rather than bids.
Correct, yeah. But it shouldn't have to be super detailed. I don't think we'd have to do a feasibility study on it. I mean, if we get people that are interested, if we get responses, then we'll know what the real interest is.
Exactly.
Right now, we're just going off what people said at the listening sessions.
Yep.
I hate to water on your idea, but I
That's
think
okay, please.
a land manager would want to be paid for that, I think.
Yeah, see, this is, and I'm not exactly sure what they would do. I've got it buried in my notes somewhere from either conversations with Deb Briscoe or this other equine person I talked with, as to what they would do. I tried to find out what their qualifications would have to be. And maybe it's maybe it's a volunteer, I don't know.
Hey, would our subcommittee do that?
You'd want to have someone or a subcommittee or some function that exists for multiple years.
Hey, boss.
Ladies. Mark, how you doing? Good, thank you.
I think the idea sounds very interesting. Because if you had a land manager that was gonna coordinate all
Yeah.
of the trails, that would be a go-to person.
Correct.
And they would oversee the big picture.
Yeah.
So, you know, so I think the idea is really good. The other question is, that sounds like too big a job for a volunteer.
Yeah, I don't know. Let me look, see if I have it in,
But maybe Susan's idea of a subcommittee
that might work.
of volunteers.
Spread it out.
And Sandy could be the chairman of that committee. She's ignoring me, isn't she?
No, I'm looking to see if I had anything in some of the literature that the gal sent to me. I don't see it right here. It's just a thought.
Yeah,
It was just something I started thinking about a week ago, and I just started jotting it down, you know, what the steps would be, and
one of the questions that I asked them, unfortunately, I couldn't get an answer. I'd be very interested to know just what sort of a network that we have here now. I think it was Wendy said, you know, we've got the maps, and we do have the maps, but I don't think the maps, unless somebody can correct me, really spell out where the logging roads are, you know, the length, what the trails and so forth are. I just don't know what we've got, number one, in the condition of
Didn't we give you
that.
a copy of that the other day, at our last meeting?
The network of it, we've got the maps, but
No, the one Wendy gave me. Wendy gave me one that had all of the logging roads on it.
no, I don't think you did.
2 meetings ago, wasn't that the?
2 meetings ago, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, because I better go back and check then. I'm not sure.
I thought we left it here.
Oh, I thought I had copies for,
well, I know you had the big copy.
Big one.
but I thought I had a little one that had all those on it. Oops, I got too many maps. But I certainly can,
Would you mind saying?
I thought I gave that to everybody. Didn't I give everybody a copy of that?
I don't recall having received a copy of it.
Where I was sitting over there.
And this outlined how many miles of trails and logging roads and so forth that were here?
I don't, yeah, it showed them all.
It showed them, but I don't think it showed distance.
No, it did
No.
not.
Yeah, and that's what I'm looking for.
Right.
And I haven't been up, we're going to walk that back line, and we haven't gotten there yet for whatever reasons, but,
Well, and that.
but I can certainly get that and find the distances,
Yeah.
because there's a scale with it, I'm sure.
Yeah, it might help us and others if we had some idea of what it is what we're dealing with here. And to me, this would be really a stretch, and I wouldn't expect people to know that. but also the conditions of those trails. I know Mark has mentioned that there may be area here where there may be some gravel and so forth, that we could start to bring these trails into shape, but, you know, what's the condition of to begin with? What is it that we'd really be putting on the table to any individual or group of individuals that were interested in taking advantage of this? They might want to know, well, you know, what's going to be involved in our part to bring these trails up into some sort of a usable condition here?
Well, that's up for them to determine.
Okay?
They come, they see these, they get Amanda's map and they walk these.
Wendy's map, it's Wendy's
Well,
map, it's not
the
mine.
one Amanda has, they walk their trails they want to use, and they say, this is what I'll do. And we go, oh, we have some gravel you can buy right here. There you go. I mean, it's up to them to decide what they want to do.
No, we cannot sell them gravel. We can move gravel from one spot on our property to another spot on our property, but we cannot charge anybody for it, because then we have to have a special permit. It's a mining permit, isn't it?
Well, I would think what we're talking about, something pretty minor.
Right, yeah.
It could be, you're gonna open up a 3-foot swale and take out material. I'm thinking.
But we can't charge them for it. I think when you charge them for it, you get into a bigger problem.
Amanda, that map, did it show the areas for logging or the actual logging roads?
The actual roads that were used.
So the areas that were logged are more extensive, because part of that map, when I looked at it, it looked like, this is pretty heavily cut.
They've been selective cuts. They haven't been
Okay.
like clear cuts.
You
I
tried-
haven't been up there. I've only been across the street, so I can tell you about across the street
Yeah.
pretty decisively, because I covered it quite well.
Mhm.
I haven't been up there to see what it actually looks like. But I do know they're anticipating another cut up there within the next year. So I would assume that some of it is rejuvenated, because this plan's been going on for 15, 20 years.
Well, anyways, they tend to cut something that will reignite what's there in 10 years, so
Yeah.
they can go back to it again.
I just went on Google Earth and was looking at
Oh, okay.
some stuff from, I think it was 2013. And it looked like it was
Hit pretty hard.
hit pretty hard, yeah.
Was that when they were working with the ice damage from the ice storm in 2000?
I have no idea. That ice storm was before 2000,
98 maybe?
something along those lines.
I tend to agree with Dale, Mr. Chairman, in that if you provide and show them where this network is, and if they have interest,
Mhm.
they'll go out and they'll take them walk, side by side, or whatever they have. And some of those roads that were cut to get logging trucks in and out, I mean, a lot of that, they're not overly improved, and, you know, that'll get you through a winter of cutting and won't necessarily be there 5 years from now either, so. Let's show them what we have and let them decide.
Okay,
When we get to that point.
if we get to that point.
And depending on the use of the trail, the condition is gonna be, what they're looking for is gonna be different. You know, the horseback riding trails, they're not gonna want gravel.
Mhm.
They're gonna want forest floor,
Mhm.
not a lot of stones, not,
Not a lot of roots,
no, not a lot of stuff, yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Well, if I've understood everybody correctly, when you were out talking to people, you were hoping to invite them down here, not so much to see if there was any interest, as Amanda said, but just basically what we should be looking for as far as the trails and the network and so forth go.
Yeah.
So would it seem logical then that the next step would be is to see if there is any interest, either from horse people, or cross-country ski people, or snowmobile groups, or ATV groups, to see if there's any interest. Because if what we get back is, it's a nice idea, but at this point in time, we're not interested, should this just be something that we just check off and move on to something else?
Without question.
Hmm?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
If there's no interest.
Exactly, why bother?
But we need to figure out if it's something we can do first, and then find out if there's interest, right? Isn't that our?
Well, how do we know what we need to do if we don't know if there's any interest? What people
No,
might be
no,
looking
what-
for?
When I say what we need to
Okay.
do is if it's something that is feasible to be done on this property. That's what I'm talking about when I say if we can do it. I thought we were doing this in steps where we learn about the activity and what it would take to have it, and then we would yay or nay whether we wanted to okay it without the feasibility study or put it into the feasibility study to see if it was a yay or nay, and then look for interested parties.
Speaking for me, I would hate to spend the money and the time on something, but at the end of the day, no one has any interest in following up on it. I'd like to see if there's some sort of interest there to begin with before we commit money, because it's gonna cost money to do that feasibility study on
I
it.
understand that, but if you want to get interest before the feasibility study, you're gonna have to figure all your Ts and cross your Ts and dot your Is with what the county's gonna require someone to do as far as insurance and fees, and we're gonna have to get all that stuff ahead of time before we can find out if there's any interested parties. I mean, say if I was interested in doing boarding horses with horse trails.
Mm-hmm.
If you came to me and said, hey, are you interested in doing this? Well, yeah, what are you proposing? What would be my fee? What would you require of me in order to do that on the property? We would need to have all that stuff in order, I would think, first, in order to give the person who's interested the information to figure out what they want to bring to the table.
I want to just reverse what you said, okay? If somebody says they have, yeah, I'm interested, they might say, okay, but this is what I would need to pursue that interest.
Okay, but
If, you come to me and you say, we're talking horses now, but it could be snowmobiles, ATVs,
okay, yeah,
something else.
any insert
Okay,
activity here.
do you have any interest in this? I would say, I might have some interest, but I'd want to, first of all, I'd want to take a look at the trails to see what's involved. And then say, I do have some interest, but these are some things that I would have, talking about the horses. Where am I gonna stall my horses? I would need to know that I can stall them here on the property. Okay, so now we know, we're putting together the list, okay, we need to take a look at stalls, what the cost would be for that stalls. Who's gonna pay for that?
Well,
So they may list out a group of things that they would need to pursue that interest. But at least, okay, now we've got someone who has at least some initial interest here, and what we're trying to determine is what is going to be the cost for them to pursue that interest.
the cost on them or the cost on the taxpayer?
It may be both. Remember, the idea is we want to severely limit the cost to the county in this.
Well, I thought we were at a big hard zero as far
Well,
as.
it could be a big hard zero.
Well, I thought
Yeah.
that's what we were
Yes.
told was a hard zero,
Yeah,
so.
right. So someone says, I have an interest, then we want to say, okay, you first tell us what you're going to be needing, because the fact of the matter is, we're not going to provide that. You're going to have to do it.
Okay.
So to me, it would still seem that I want to know if there's any interest out there, recognizing, maybe I'm looking at this thing cockamamie, but it's going to be up to them to do this. They need stalls, regardless of what they may need, is Amanda.
Well, what I was thinking,
Okay, good.
before we get to the private businesses.
Yeah,
Because something like that would go out to RFP, or be,
Yeah.
to everybody.
okay.
Maybe are there organizations, is there an inclined organization that might like to look at this and come up with ideas that would be enjoyable? It's like the snowmobile, there are snowmobile associations that might say, they might come and look and go, gee, this is really nice, but we want to connect it to another trail, it's too small, or Yeah, we could just make a nice little round about the whole county trail, and that would be fun. But those would be the things that the organizations would do.
Mhm.
I don't know if there's any cross-country ski organizations. or not.
Yeah. You know, getting back to the comment that was made about maybe having someone, hopefully a volunteer, but it might not be, to kind of oversee this thing. I mean, and a thought that went through my head, just what sort of coordination would we need? Okay, we get a group that's very interested in having horseback riding trails here. And then we also find we have a group that's interested in ATVs. And I'm just wondering, how are we gonna coordinate this? You know, 2 or 3 people out riding the horse, and all of a sudden an ATV comes zooming down the trail, and the horses just go absolutely crazy.
That's why one of the things that I think that the county, either through this group, perhaps, needs to decide is what types of activities we would permit
Mm-hmm.
first, before you go out and contact interested sport groups, I'll call it. For example, if the decision was made that ATVs was not a good fit, then you wouldn't even approach an ATV group.
Mm-hmm, yep, yep.
If you decided that mountain biking was a good fit, then there are organizations in Carroll County that are involved with mountain biking. So you could go and approach that group. But I think it's something that the county needs to decide.
That's why we're here.
The county is kind of relying on us as
Well,
far.
by us, by the county, I mean this group, this
The
committee,
committee.
because we're
Because the
operating at their behest.
The commissioners are in favor of trails being used by the public.
Right.
I dare not say anymore, but that was the last that was a group.
Yeah.
A group.
If I could just jump in here for a second. Court made the comment, motorized multi-use could be a problem outside of the ski season due to erosion issues, and in-season trails for cross-country skiing should be for skiers and snowshoeing only. And he goes on to say that motorized use is definitely not compatible with Nordic trails. So I think as we're looking about this, all these multi-uses, it could very well be that there could be some non-compatibility here. I mean, I mentioned horseback riding and ATVs, but as he said, motorized, so if we're gonna allow snowmobiles on here, and we're also allowing cross-country skiing and so forth, again, there's gonna be a problem here. These are definitely not compatible. So I think we have to really, to help answer, who we wanna be approaching on this, we may wanna more clearly answer ourselves. Basically, what do we want, as Sandy says, what use do we want to allow on those trails? Realizing that it's a multi-use throughout the season dictates it.
Well, interestingly, when I was speaking with Sue Valentine, her trails are used for snowmobiles in the winter. She allows.
These are horseback trails?
Yes.
Okay, so she doesn't do any horseback riding in the winter at all then?
Generally, no.
Okay,
No, once
okay,
it's
okay.
snowfall, no.
Okay,
And
so
she
horseback riding
actually-
is seasonal?
Yeah.
Okay.
She actually likes it though, because the snowmobile club maintains the trails.
They do maintain them?
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's
She
part of
showed
the
me a couple
agreement,
of
they
trees that
maintain the
came
trails.
down,
Yep.
and they came out and cleared the trees off the trails.
Yep,
Yeah, so she says mutually beneficial.
okay, okay.
And who does that coordination? She does,
Just Sue
she'll
and the
contact
club,
them,
yep.
the club that says, hey, we got some trees down? Or does the club, when they're out grooming, see that there's a tree down?
She must have told them, because they came down this past spring and they came
Okay.
out before snowfall and moved them.
Okay.
I think Bart, and dread's not the right term right now, but Department of Trails, Division of Trails,
Mhm.
provides so much funding to each snowmobile club. Each snowmobile club has a section, whether it's the Scramblers or whoever it is, And I believe they have to turn in a work plan of where they've been, how much they've done, and they're looking at continuity that so many miles are done every year. So I think the state and the group works that part out. But there may be I guess we haven't had a chance to print the big maps yet, but there's parts of this property that are totally incompatible to cross-country skiing, but might be compatible to motorized vehicles of some type. And when you've got such big acreage, it's just a matter of finding out what goes where.
Yeah.
You know, I sketched real quick, when you talk to people, there should be a list of things, simple list, and it can be expanded. But if whoever is here and going to use the property, if it comes out of current use, they should be prepared to pay for that fee. And there are some activities that don't require things coming out of current use. If we're starting with a trail network, they're going to maintain the trails in the same condition that was turned over to them. And every year of a multi-year, somebody's going to walk through it and see that they're there. Limits of liability. The commissioners are going to set what their limits of insurance has to be, and then they're going to have to hold the county harmless, you know, if something were to happen. They're going to need to commit to minimum hours or days of operation, because if they won't do that, then we shouldn't be tying up land. And then all outside advertising for what's going to happen on this property should go through a review by someone before it's released. But at the same point, you have to put realistic, you know, it's reviewed by the county, you know, in 2 weeks after submitted or whatever, or 4 months ahead or something. But I think we can say to people, here's a minimum standard of what we're thinking, you know, and there will be some sort of fee for the use of it. What that is, we don't know. But I think you can just say, you know, there you go, there's where we're thinking. Here's the maps, look at them, what looks compatible to you. You go have a look and get back to us. Motorized is a dirty word when you're talking to all these people. Motorized, but it doesn't have to be.
It doesn't
So-
have
Not in Claus County, it's
Yeah,
not anymore.
it's not. So when we have acreage this big, you know, I've got a feeling that there's going to be places that it could be, or maybe there's no interest. If there's no interest, if you had someone that's only gonna come in and do horseback riding for 3 months out of the year and cherry pick those months, but at the same point, it takes someone else out of operation that could be here for 5 or 6 months and offer more use for the county, you know, you're gonna have to weigh out those options also.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's just a common sense thing. You don't want money monetarily. The county stands to gain more by using the land for 6 months than it does 2. So someone will have to figure out which ones are getting the biggest bang for the buck, basically, to put it in simple terms.
Well, again, if I understood Mark correctly, and I have not walked the property, so I don't know, but if there's acreage here that basically is not suited for one use, but maybe suited for another, then there's no reason, thinking ahead, why we couldn't begin to exclude uses. In other words, if this terrain is ideal for snowmobiles, but may not be that good for cross-country skiing, well, then we limit that to snowmobiles, let it go with that.
You'd have to have accessibility via roads and parking and all that
Yeah,
stuff too, but yeah.
So, and the thing is, we're now thinking about this thing and haven't sat down and really thought it through, but we may be able to maximize the use of more of the property and therefore generate more income. Because we are getting multi-uses on it at the same time, but they aren't competing with each other. Amanda.
And some of the uses might be for money and some might be free. You know, for
Possibly.
hiking, we might have
Yeah.
some hiking trails
Or bikes.
that would be free, or
Yeah.
mountain biking,
Yeah.
but then motorized three-wheelers or four-wheelers, you know, because of the added expense in maintaining that road or whatever, or maybe some group would like to rent certain trails. We don't have to rent out all the property. I think we can, you know, okay, here's Trail A, and maybe, you know, some horse group would like to come in and rent that for 3 months, and Trail B, maybe the motorized vehicle might like that one, or cross-country skiing would be in a different season. But a lot of places, I know at my farm, I have people with four-wheel motorized vehicles that come, and they want to be able to come in the winter, and they're not allowed on skidoo trails in the winter. So they come up to my place, and where I go with my tractor for my wood and things of that nature, they come with their four-wheelers. So, you know, but there are places on my property where the skidoo trail goes through. They just don't meet, that's all. So both are used at the same time. Both have uses on my property at the same time, but not on the same line, not on the same roads or whatever. So I'm thinking, what Mark said, we have a lot of property here, and that we can probably have multiple uses if we just restrict.
Yeah.
How do we figure out which terrain is good for which use?
Well, the man from the Lands and Forests that was coming
Yeah.
last week, I did not ask about rescheduling,
Okay.
but that is, I believe, his expertise.
Okay.
He
Okay,
looks-
so you have talked with somebody who you feel could really assist this committee in that, in laying out the best use for some of these trails, what might be the
Right,
better use
he's
for
going
them?
to come with our forester
Yeah,
and talk about
Mhm.
erosion. Erosion's the biggest problem we
Yeah,
have,
yeah.
from what he was telling me, and that they could discuss with us what types of activities could be allowed
Mhm.
on those particular logging trails that are there, and possibly this new cut they're planning. When we could help design the trails or the logging roads, the skidder roads, so that they would meet requirements that would make non-erosion routes.
mhm.
So this was Peter Sporer.
Yes.
He was going to come out and do a on-the-land evaluation? Or was
No.
he just going to talk to us
He
here in the
was
meeting?
going to use Wendy's knowledge
Yeah,
of the land and the maps and his expertise,
okay,
and they were going to kind of combine it together.
okay,
That's why Wendy didn't want to come alone without him, and
yeah. Did anybody see the Union Leader yesterday? There was an article in there called Trailblazing in the North Country, and it was about a network of trails that is being put together in the Franconia area. And it mentions a trail designer. He talked with a group in Franconia. So it was an interesting article.
And who, is the state owning these trails,
Um,
Sandy?
Some of it is going through the
National Park.
national parks, and some of it's on private land and going
Okay.
into the town.
Okay,
Yeah.
and who's,
The Fox Hill Trails, owned and maintained by the town of Franconia.
okay. So
Well,
they're
that's an
funding it then.
existing one. And then they're talking about a larger non-motorized network of rec trails in the future. And they're using grant funds.
Grant funds, okay.
Yeah, I made a copy, I printed out a copy, I didn't send copies to everybody.
that was in yesterday's Union Leader.
The 16th, yeah. The trail designer, builder, is from Vermont. A gentleman by the name of John Morton.
Should this be something that we do in a subcommittee?
It might be.
It might be,
Yeah, and I was thinking also, I think it might really be helpful, Amanda, if both Wendy and the gentleman you talked about could either come to a meeting or in a subcommittee, maybe become part of a subcommittee to provide some of that information for us. I'm not sure in my mind what it is we're talking about here, as far as the trails go and the types of trails and a connection. Dale had made a comment a few minutes back, and I hope I'm not taking it out of context here, but let's just say that someone decided, well, this terrain here is ideally suited for snowmobiles, and we want to keep those off the cross-country ski trails and so forth. But to get to that, you've got to cross the cross-country ski trails. But what if we could build another trail coming into it so that the snowmobiles never have to go on any other trails, but it just to those trails that have been signed as for snowmobiling. But again, I don't know. There's just still a lot of questions going on in my mind here as to how we start to structure this whole thing, and that's going on the basis that in fact that there is interest out there in doing it. I would just hate to see whether it's this committee or a subcommittee go through an awful lot of work, doing work, and spending time and effort and bring in, quote, experts, and at the end of the day, say, okay, who's interested? And people say, no, I don't have any interest, I'm sorry. And we think we've wasted the time and energy on this.
Well, actually, I think we should take a look at the list that Mark's been putting together,
Mhm.
figure out, maybe formalize that a little bit, and then just send out, hey, is there anybody out there that's interested in doing these kinds of activities or developing a trail network on this property?
Mhm.
Just find out if they're interested before we do
Yeah.
anything further.
These two lists that you put together, Sandy, I haven't had a chance to really look at them. But could these be an entree into other groups and so forth that might be interested in using this?
Well, one of them is the thing called, the list of trail documents was a bunch of references from, talks about, things you want to look at.
Yeah.
And the other list talked about the Mount Washington Valley Recreation Path, which I think is up in North Conway. Then there's the New England Mountain Biking Association. There's a chapter in Carroll, New Hampshire. So those two would be two groups. We should contact the state. There's that trails group,
That Mark was talking about,
Yep.
yes.
And maybe the snowmobile clubs.
Yeah.
I think the state trails group does do snowmobiles, right?
They do. I suggest what perhaps we do is, we have a base map, the planning commission, GIS based. We send that down to DRED and ask them, DRED's long-term form. Ask them to kind of mark in where their trail network intersects anywhere in here or touches us. And let's have them input that. They can access the same system, and that could actually drop onto our map. And then let's get the copy distributed of this other map, and we just start zeroing some things in, and then some things that aren't as close. But let's get on. I keep hearing about the old ski lift. Where the heck is that? Let's put that on the plan. At least chalk it in somewhere. And let's add things on to that, at least in a rough form.
Is it visible at all, or is it just all, has anyone ever seen it?
Let's circle our water reservoir is here,
Right.
and there's.
Put our features on the
Yeah,
map.
let's put it on it. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd rather spend time than just rehashing everything, and
Yeah.
that's what we're doing. And I'd like to get, the motorized people and the people you spoke to. I
Yeah.
think that would be wonderful
Yeah.
for us all to hear. And then we throw that map in front of them. We say DRED's identified here, and, and here's where our water system is.
Mhm.
Here's our jail. We know we can't do anything within X number of feet of our jail. So,
And we know we gotta stay X far off the septic system.
So we can, those features we can pencil in pretty close.
And before you got here, because you sent the maps to both of us, and I didn't know if you'd gone down to see Lisa or not, so I didn't, because I didn't want to double it. But I will do that.
We'll remind you, you are Madam Chairman, we would expect you to do that.
No, I'm not chairman of this group.
That's why I included you, because I figured you'd be the person that'd walk down the hall and ask if they
Okay,
could do it.
so I will do that.
Yeah.
I will do that, and I
Because
will.
I think as a practice, they don't want people from the outside asking
Yeah.
to do something.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Okay, I will
They don't want
take
that to
care of
be
that, and
habit.
I will also see if I can get in contact with Concord. You said Dredge isn't the right.
I'll talk to him. I saw Chris Gamache the other day, and I just didn't have a chance to talk to him.
Okay,
So I
so
can
you'll-
call
you'll-
him.
you'll check
I
on
can
it.
pick up the phone.
Okay.
I can send
All
him an
right.
email. I'll copy on the email and say, here's our base map. Just tell me how we can get your maps, how
Yeah.
you can lay that on there. And I'm sure they have the technology then to develop a layer over the top of that.
The,
And one of the maps that we can ask to add on to this shows all of our wellhead protection zones, which will then show, what she mentioned in her email, which will then show us where our wells are on this map also. We can just start throwing all sorts of things on here. And when it gets too busy, then we just, move another map over to the side.
From a
I
time-
think it's easy, excuse me for interrupting,
Good.
but
No, go
I
ahead, Emily.
think there is interest for definitely hiking and biking and motorized vehicles. There are others I'm not sure about, but I think those three, it's safe to say there is, because any place that's open to hiking in the summer, if you look at the parking lots and they're full. And I have a lot of people complain that the trails they're hiking on are very crowded, you know.
There's definitely interest in horseback riding as well.
Mhm.
The woman I met with, she's on the other end of 171, and there's no place for them to go. And I didn't realize it, but Castle on the Clouds is closed to outside horses. The only horses that can use those trails are the horses that are
Oh, you're.
stabled up there.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep.
And I agree, because I have people come up on my road with trailers, with horses,
Mhm.
and unload their horses and ride up on my property. And other people's, they ride there's a class 6 road they ride on and things. So I think just looking at what people are doing, there's an interest. Now, privatizing it and that type of thing, that depends on how strong an interest there is. But I think to study this and to look at this, I think it would be well worth the effort, and I think it would be interesting to people.
Okay, so the next question is, because we talked, this has been brought up a couple times, do we want to explore creating a subcommittee that basically people who have much more experience and expertise in this to work on this? Maybe their network, their connections, so forth, are better.
I think it would be good, because we've spent how many weeks on this now?
Yeah,
Time for us to find somebody to work on it, and then we could.
we can move on to something else.
Move on to something else.
Yeah. As Mark says, we just seem to be kind of going over the same thing
Mhm.
here and getting bogged down. And I think, I can just speak for me, it's because I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. I don't have the expertise in the background in this sort of stuff. So we can be talking about this 6 months, and I'm still gonna be asking the same question. So if we could create a subcommittee that, people with much more experience in this, turn it over to them, give them a time frame to get back to us, and we can move on to other things. Because there's certainly other things to work on. We got a whole list of other things there.
Yes.
And if we just, gonna be taking one at a time over a 2 or 3 month period, we'll all retire here.
I do have a question about
Yes.
time. When, the grants, when are those applications due?
I have not seen the schedule, like USDA, I have not seen a schedule yet.
Okay.
They're into their new fiscal year, so I would imagine that if I could get in touch with Bev Mason out of Conway, that she could probably give us the schedule. But again, it's more than, as we know, USDA is a gigantic organization here, and there are many grant cycles for different things. So I think she would want to know, what specifically are you looking for? What would you be looking for a grant for? And then she could then give us the cycle. Okay, there's gonna be something coming up in August, or something in October. Not October, because that's the end of the fiscal year, but so we've got to be much more specific in what it is we're looking for as far as grants go.
Well, I'm talking about the matching funding for the feasibility study.
Yeah, well, the thing is, they don't do feasibility studies.
Well, I thought you had funding.
USDA,
I thought
Okay,
you-
fine.
yeah.
I thought you had funding for the matching funds for the feasibility study.
From the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation and for the Kendall Foundation.
Or what's their schedule for application?
I think for the Charitable Foundation, don't hold me to this, but I think it's April. The Kendall Foundation, I don't know. And they'd be willing to go $5,000, and the Kendall Foundation also indicated that $5,000 was a comfortable range for them. So we have matching funds then for the $10,000 that the county has.
But that wouldn't be until, April is when the deadline.
I think so. I'll have to double check to be sure on that, Amanda. But somewhere in the back of my mind, I thought they said, I think they have 2 cycles a year. This is the Charitable Foundation now. I think one is April, and I think one is in the fall. But again, don't hold me to that.
Well, because we're in budget session right now, and we're
Yes.
holding this 10,000
Yep,
over.
yep,
We need to have some deadlines.
Yep.
Some timelines.
Yep.
Mark can probably answer.
It's, you ask it to be held over, it can be held over.
Yeah.
Just, you know, it's gonna be the same conditions, and, you know, it's gonna need delegation, majority vote to expend the funds, which is what we've always said,
Yeah.
so.
But there'll be no problem with holding it over.
There's a lot of people we're gonna talk to, but I would tend to think there would be enough interest to hold it
yeah.
over.
I hope so.
We're not the bad guys.
Sir, neither are we.
No, there's, you know, everyone I speak to is encouraged by you know, the exploration is being done here, so we'll move in, you know, good faith direction.
Let's talk about the subcommittee for a minute here before we leave this. I'd like to leave this meeting with some idea of a subcommittee that we can move forward rather than just talk about it in
Should we have a member of this group be a chairman of that subcommittee?
we had briefly discussed that. We never made a decision, but we briefly had discussed of having someone from this committee be the chair of the subcommittee to keep that connection with the main committee here. So,
May I ask a question?
sure.
What are you forming a subcommittee for now?
I think-
missed last week, and
Okay, to take the information that you're gonna be gathering, and the information that Amanda's gonna be gathering, and reaching out to people with horseback riding trails and so forth, and start to see snowmobile clubs.
That map you wanted. with
Right,
all the-
and to start to
Okay.
gather some information and see if there's any interest in this, and who might be willing to get out there and hike the trails, walk the trails and so forth, and get some idea of, yes, there's interest or there isn't any interest, and if there is, what needs to be done.
could I suggest that we have one more meeting where we pull that mapping together, and then you go forward? from
Okay, that's fine, that's fine.
there? So I'll get with Chris, tell us the date.
Yep,
And
yep.
he'll provide that information.
Could we have that in 2 weeks then, for the next meeting, you
I
think?
think so.
Is
Okay.
it meeting in 2 weeks, or are we going back on schedule?
Well,
For
the holiday's
Thanksgiving
coming
next
up,
week.
throw it all off.
I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, I know, well, let's discuss that, but we're digressing. But do you want us, starting today, go back onto a 2-week schedule? Not going back on the 10th, starting the 2-week schedule based on
Right.
that, but starting the 2-week schedule based on today.
So today is November 17th?
Yes,
The first and the 15th.
First,
First and the
15th
15th?
and the 29th.
okay.
December 1.
Is everybody comfortable with that?
15, 29, and that skips Christmas and Thanksgiving.
Yes.
When are we having our Christmas party?
I was thinking the 15th.
Okay, good, I'm in. Sign me up.
Passing of the cookies.
Ugly sweater.
Okay, so we're comfortable with that?
Yeah.
We start the 2-week cycle today, okay. All right, so that means that, in Mark, you feel comfortable that we can have that information by the,
Yep.
And Amanda, you feel
Yes,
good? Okay.
I will get that.
Okay, so let's get back then to the, okay, and we're gonna be waiting, looking at the subcommittee to wait until we've gathered that information. And I think it'd be helpful if everybody could begin to think about that subcommittee as well, and more specifically, what exactly we want that subcommittee to be focusing on. We don't want them running adrift and coming back 2 weeks later and say, well, what was it you wanted? I think we gotta give them specific questions that we can answers for.
We'd like them to do better than us.
Excuse me, as I said, I must
You
leave.
said you did have to go. Thank you, Amanda. Have a nice Thanksgiving, Amanda.
Thank you. Mark, my next, just a
Sure.
minute, please.
My mother used to use that tone of voice.
I know, right?
It's when she says your middle name, that's when you know you're in trouble.
We can get a lot done with both of them outside.
Okay, what have we missed as far as the trails go here? Have we pretty much beat that to death?
I think so.
Okay.
4 or 5 times.
Okay, all right, good. Then let's move on. Being positive, looking at the next step on the list here. And as I had mentioned to the committee, I've had a couple of email exchanges with Representative Cordelli. And a little bit of history here, way back when, and Ed Comeau can jump in on this, the delegation itself, last summer, summer of 16, created a subcommittee to take a look at some of the use of the buildings in the county land from an educational perspective. And Representative Comeau was on that committee. I think Representative Cordelli chaired it. I think Representative McConkey was also on that committee. And as I said, I've emailed Representative Cordelli several times, and he's been following up on this. As I think I may have mentioned, several weeks back, I talked with the president of the White Mountain Community College in Berlin, and the woman who's the head of that branch of the White Mountain Community College in North Conway. And they expressed an interest, depending on what was asked of them, but to discuss with us, them also connecting with Representative Cordelli and doing something, having an educational presence down here through the community college system. And in emailing with Glenn Cordelli, he also has been in touch with the community college system about that connection. And what I'd like to put on the table here is that the next thing we take a look at is that educational component. And in that process, I will be involved in the subcommittee on that if we want to, bring in Representative Cordelli and anybody else who wants to. But I would like to, when we discuss that, if we could, to bring in the president of the community college up in Berlin to see just what services they may be able to offer. And also, I know Representative Cordelli, way back, brought in some people from the Concord area who also talked about some educational services that they may be offered down here as well. And if Glenn is interested, maybe inviting them to it as well. Let's see if we can't get some outside educational people here. Now, what I'm thinking of is, and I'm not familiar with the Ossipee area, but in the Conway area, in the upper Mount Washington Valley, there's Granite State College, there's a branch of the White Mountain Community College. What is there down here as far as educational services go? Do you have any idea? But I'm just wondering, and I should wait till Mark comes back, if maybe, this is outside of our box a little bit, but not really, if we could begin to bring some educational services at the college level down here onto this campus. I mean, we've looked at this purely in terms of agriculture. But I know when I was chatting with Glenn, he had talked with the community college about, they've got a tremendous culinary program, and he was looking at the old nursing home here, their kitchen facilities, of maybe running culinary programs there. So we're starting to think about this in a much broader context than just helping somebody grow an ear of corn. But now we're starting to really expand upon this and maybe providing a much needed service down here from an educational point of view that goes beyond the initial limits that we had talked about. Sandy, you take questions.
Yeah, didn't we just, I mean, I think we need to, this is the next area we need to talk about.
Yep.
Education.
Yes.
It's question of when.
Okay,
Didn't we just say that we wanted to have one more meeting to take a look at the map that Mark's gonna
Yes.
annotate?
yep,
And worry about who's gonna chair a subcommittee?
yep.
So
Well, we
we're
already
gonna
have
do
We
that?
already have a chairman.
So we're gonna do that next time?
The sub-
And then start on the education as well?
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think the next meeting, it will take the full 2 hours to discuss this? I mean, we
Yeah.
beat this thing. You think it will?
I think it's pretty well beat.
Huh?
I think it's pretty well beat,
I think it's pretty much beat.
yeah.
So I was thinking maybe we could, all right, let's discuss this. Do we want to limit each meeting to just one topic? Or do we feel that based where we are?
I just don't know, I don't know.
And I don't know either, Sandy. That's why I said, do we think we need to limit ourselves? Well, I can just see months and months and months
Yeah.
and just solving one issue at a time here
That's
and all
good.
going crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what we're gonna be doing is, hopefully, at the next meeting, is farm this out to a subcommittee, and that kind of takes it off our table
Mhm.
and gives us now the freedom to start to move in other areas. And maybe in the education, we may wanna create another subcommittee. And so, you know, we can continue to move on and have these
Okay,
various
good.
subcommittees, just keep feeding back information to us.
But we need people for subcommittees,
Yes, we
right?
do.
Okay.
And that's my concern.
Yeah.
Is we can sit here and create a subcommittee looking at the trails and all that stuff. But who's-
Right on
but-
paper.
But it does look, but who's gonna,
Right.
who's gonna volunteer to be in the
Exactly.
subcommittees? And that's a question. Do we feel confident? And Amanda unfortunately had to leave. So look at Susan. Susan, you were talking with the horsewoman and so forth. Did you, in your neck of the woods, do you know anybody who might be interested? They wouldn't have to come to meetings. They could do this in their home and stuff like that?
She might be very interested in helping,
Okay.
especially if she doesn't have to leave the barn.
Okay.
She can do this, you know,
Okay.
at night or something.
Yeah. Would you
Not
be willing to
technically.
chair that subcommittee?
Whoa.
Okay. What, do you want to do it?
Oh, no.
Yes.
We moved on, are we
Well,
back on this, or?
What, the trails?
Yeah.
No.
No,
I think
I was just asking,
All right.
I'm just trying to figure out timing.
Okay, yes. And if I understand it correctly, both Mark and Amanda have said that they will have, but they need to bring it ready for next weekend,
Good.
for the next meeting. So, okay, so then we can discuss it a little bit and turn it over to the subcommittee,
And
of which
then-
Susan has agreed to chair. Thank you very much, Susan. And if, in that travels, if anybody knows anybody else that's willing to be on that, then we'll have Susan, get in touch with Susan. Okay, so we beat that to death. Dale?
No, we're good, I'm
You
with
good,
you.
good, okay,
good.
all right. Then let's move on to education, okay? Dale!
Uh,
He's been sitting here reading.
If I remember, my memory serves me correctly,
Yep.
isn't there already someone from UNH, or wasn't there someone from UNH here doing a tomato something or other this summer?
That's
Yeah.
it.
So
Yeah.
shouldn't we?
That was through extension, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
So shouldn't we involve UNH in this as well, where they're already a presence here?
Well, that would be Olivia Sanders. Sanders, she's the.
Well, whoever it is.
Yeah, she's the extension person here. The extension is out of UNH.
Yeah,
So we, I'm fine with, we ought to
I
invite.
would think we should-
Yes, yeah.
yeah, where they're already here.
Yes.
Maybe they would want to
Right.
increase their
Right.
visibility on property.
Right. Well, as I say, and that's why I think it's important that we connect with Glenn Cadelli when moving forward, because he chaired that subcommittee, and I know in emailing with Glenn and talking with him, he's been out there doing work on this, which is why I think it's crucial
Well,
that he
that's
be at
great,
the table.
yeah.
He needs to be at this table.
Personally, I think an education facility or what, like for college credits is above this committee's,
Pay grade?
I didn't want to say that, but yeah, I think it's out of
Yeah.
our realm, our scope.
Well, okay, flesh that out for me a little bit then, Dale.
Because we have these 4 topics, main topics that we're looking to study. And education is one of those 4.
Yeah,
If we're looking at college accredited courses, that's a huge undertaking. And we have so much other stuff to do. A subcommittee would be great, and Representative Cordelli and all those things, but if we stay within our realm, the UNH agricultural end of it, I think is more in our scope than some big culinary
Okay.
educational facility.
Okay, can I just jump in here?
Are you most
Okay,
certainly?
as I said, one of the last exchanges that I had with Glenn, I can't remember whether this was when we had talked, met somewhere and talked, or whether it was via email, but he had brought up that one of the things that he has looked into with the White Mountain Community College
Right, or the
is
college.
basically is using that old kitchen for a culinary program. Now, that's a certificate program. Now,
Right.
that doesn't mean that somebody couldn't come down there and learn how to boil tomatoes, or make pastries. But the fact of the matter is, that is a certificate program in which at the end of it, you say, look, I'm a chef, I got a certificate that proves it, because it's through the college, you're getting credits.
Okay.
Okay, so Glenn, and I'm glad he did, believe me, I like the way Glenn thinks, I'll be perfectly honest with you. So he himself is starting to look at this, I think. Early on when we were talking about this, he had this tied in with extension. This was purely education over here, using the greenhouses and so forth. And I know I had talked with him and with Mark a little bit, could we broaden that to start to do some research as well? What are some of the better crops that we can grow here in the county, based on length of the growing season, soil conditions, and all that kind of stuff?
Right.
So we're thinking of expanding it. And I'll admit, I'm just putting this on the table for the first time. We have not discussed other possibilities and capabilities, which is why I asked the question up front. I don't know, Mark, you may have a better idea. I don't know what the educational facility opportunities are here in this part of Carroll County. I know in the Mount Washington Valley, we've got Granite State College, we've got White Mountain Community College. I don't know what there is down here. So if we invited the president of, his name is Chuck Lloyd, by the way, he's the president. If he came down here and said, well, gee, if there's any interest, we could offer maybe bookkeeping, maybe some business management. Anybody in farming might be interested in business planning and management and so forth, so there's some compatibility here. Other business schools, I don't know. He may say, no, we're not gonna go there. Maybe the county itself would say we don't wanna go there, but I think we should at least explore some of these things. If we can increase educational opportunities here in this part of the county, I think we should at least see if does this thing work?
I'm not
No,
saying that
yes.
education is a bad idea to
Yeah,
have here.
I
I'm really
know
not.
you're not. I know you're
Because I think it can all be
Yep.
encompassing.
Yep.
I mean, if you want a chef, what do they use to, what do they chef? They chef fruits and vegetables and meat.
That's right.
There you
Yeah.
go. It all could tie in.
Yep.
So I'm not against it by any stretch of the imagination. So, yeah.
So
Just leave it.
that's, and it may not work. Everybody may mutually agree this is not a good fit. But I know when I did talk with Chuck Lloyd and that Christine Miller, they were both very interested in saying, yeah, we would love to come down and talk to you, to see if there's a fit at all. And I know, as I say, that Glenn has been talking with some educational groups, and these are not necessarily farmers, these again are offering programs that a farmer would need, business management,
Right.
planning, these are things that, and he's talked with them. I attended one of the workshops that he put on, he did a great job with it. So there may be other areas of interest, and obviously Olivia Saunders, who's the extension person, should be sitting at that table as well. And she can kind of filter through this too.
Question?
Yes, Sandy?
Did that subcommittee produce a report?
No, not that aware, but it's ongoing.
It is ongoing,
Yeah,
okay.
It hasn't met for a while, but it's ongoing.
Yeah,
Okay. Because I was gonna say, if they had a report, it'd be great to be able to see it.
yeah. I know the last email exchanges I had with Glenn, I said, would you be willing to come down, since he is way far ahead of us on this,
Yeah.
way far ahead of
We
us.
need to have him here.
And I said, would you be willing to come down to our committee to bring us
Yeah.
up to speed? He says, I would love to, just give me the day, I'll be there.
Good, good.
So it's not a question, and the thing is, Glenn and I have connected over the years, and I don't think we see this thing as we're competing against each other at all, but how do we work together and pool those resources
Yeah.
to come up with something really good? And so that should be the goal.
Yeah, that would be fabulous.
Yeah, he brings a wealth of this to the
And
table. he really
Fridays
does.
is generally an open day as far
Friday's a better day, yes.
Yeah.
as far as the legislature's concerned, okay.
Yeah, yeah, so what I'd like to do is, I'd like to get a sense from the committee today to get back to Glenn and to say, we're
Great.
moving along on this, Glenn, and how does this fit your schedule, and discuss with him some of the things that I have discussed here today, and get his sense of this, because as I say, his subcommittee is way ahead of us on this, and I think we don't want to waste that information and knowledge that he's
No,
got.
no. See if he can come and talk with us next time, on the 2nd.
Okay? Are we comfortable with that? Do we
First.
feel,
I'm sorry, you're right, the 1st. The 2nd is Saturday.
yeah. Should I get in touch with, you want me to get in touch with Glenn then and invite him?
That's what I'm hearing that
We'd
we
have
want
him,
to
we'd have him
do.
come and say at 4. I mean, do we need to spend an hour basically going over what Mark is gonna be putting on the table and what Amanda's gonna be putting on the table and what we're gonna be basically giving to the
Let's
subcommittee?
just limit that to 45 minutes max.
I think a half an hour is more than adequate.
Tell Glenn to come, he'll enjoy it. Tell him
Yeah.
to come regular time or
Yeah,
within a
that's
minute.
Yeah, okay.
We can laugh at it.
Yeah.
No, he'll come, that's,
Okay, I will invite Glenn in on the 1st at 3 o'clock, okay. And I'll discuss with him some of the things that I've discussed with you about reaching out. As he put on a real good show over there, that was at the community school over here in Tamworth. He put on a real good show, I thought. Brought in a lot of good speakers and they had a lot of ideas to put on the table.
Mhm.
And let's build on that. I will do it.
I'm just looking at our little grid that we put together. This is from the 29th of September. We had forest management education and hunting education on
Yeah.
there as well.
Yeah,
I know they do a hunter education course, I think up in Conway?
yes, it's.
Madison?
Yes, it is in Madison.
Is
They've
there
got a
one
fishing-
down in this area?
They've got a fishing game club there.
you know, the Sunset Range over there in Molten Grove
Oh,
does,
they've got
almost,
one.
almost
Yeah,
all of them. do.
yeah.
Okay, fine, so we don't need another one.
Yeah, would that be a redundancy on our part with this?
Well, it may.
I'm
That's why I
just
was
wondering
asking.
if they want a better facility to hold their activity at,
Yeah,
you know, something more central.
yeah, yeah.
It was just a question,
You know, I don't know.
yeah.
I think a lot of this is gonna come down, is there a communal space to hold these things in? It's the first thing those people are gonna ask, where are you gonna hold this
Yep,
stuff?
yep,
And
yep.
before we spend a lot of money renovating a building to do that, we should be looking at space that's available. Could this space be available in the evening? Could part of the nursing home be available? What do we have for inventory
Yep.
of space that's already available?
That does
I-
not
I-
require renovation.
Yes, I made a dangerous assumption, Mark, and those are always dangerous, in that there was space here already existing that could be used. And the nursing home, there's a room over there, a conference room, that we have used repeatedly.
Yeah.
You know, there's quite a dining room over there that, again, that's limited, time, so there's this room if that would be, so I think the space here, you know, but the point is there any interest, and just as importantly, with whether it's the organizations, the educational organizations that Glenn has talked to, or the White Mountain Community College, whether they have any interest. I mean, that's the thing, they may say, no, forget it, but as I say, and I don't know, but I don't know what the educational resources are available, that are available down here. If you live in the Mount Washington Valley, you don't have a problem, because you get 2. And I don't know what else is available, and anyway, I'm not gonna beat this to death anymore. But I will get in touch with Glenn Cadelli and see, and I will keep the committee posted via email. Okay, is there anything else that we want to discuss for our next meeting? We've already got basically continuation, and create a subcommittee on the trails and so forth. And now we've got education, and since that's the new topic we're gonna be discussing, I'm just going on the basis that will take up the balance of the time that we've got on our meeting 2 weeks from now. Ideal. Does anybody have anything else, or have we sufficiently beat these topics to death? Susan?
Nothing?
And as I say, if we want to create a committee, a subcommittee on education, I'd be more than happy to chair that, to work with Glenn on that.
Susan, did I hear that you agreed to chair the subcommittee on the trails?
Yes.
Non-motorized trails.
Yes.
On non-motorized
No,
trails,
no,
all right. Do you want me to send you some of those documents that I have in electronic form?
Please.
Okay.
If you want to
Anybody
work
else-
with her on that, Sandy, feel free. I don't
Listen,
think.
I am going to be working on a humongous value-added producer grant, which is due at the end of January,
Okay.
which is gonna take me pretty busy.
Is this with the North Country Farmers Co-op?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So I'm gonna be,
Go with God.
thank you, my first grant writing.
Ooh. A week ago, last Tuesday, the Economic Council had a workshop on writing grants.
Yeah.
And I went, it was interesting. I don't know anything about grants at all, and I thought it would at least give you some exposure to what's involved in this.
It depends on the grant.
Yeah.
Some of them are easy. The value-added producers are pretty complicated. And it can take 80 hours or more to do it.
How much you were asking for on the grant?
Oh, for the USDA portion, about 50, between 50 and 60.
Okay.
It's not that much.
And there's another portion, you said the USDA portion.
Oh, the other portion would be matching funds,
Okay.
so other grants.
Yeah. Yeah. What I did do, and I'm digressing here now, and I apologize for that, I've had several email exchanges with Ken Robichaud, and one of them that I asked him for, which I thought was interesting, and this falls under agriculture. I asked him on the food budget for both the nursing home and the jail, and combined, it's $765,000. That's
Yeah.
what we budgeted for the food for those two
That's
facilities.
about right.
Yeah. And then I emailed Will DeWitt, and put poor Will on the spot. And I said, okay, Will, I said, the question is, based on what, when you know the equipment, the acreage, I said, how much acreage can we put into production to get to match that, to be able to provide some of that? And he said, boy, I think we really need a study to do that. And as you recall, when we had talked about where we're gonna be putting the feasibility study, we felt the agricultural area was in one area that we definitely want to take a look at. But I look at that $765,000, and Mark has a lot more experience than this than I do, and he's probably sitting there thinking, forget it.
Well-
But that's a lot of money.
It is, but the last time I had spoken with the, I forget what the guy's name is, at the nursing home, the chef.
The dietitian,
Well,
nutrition, yeah, okay.
whoever's in charge of the
Yeah,
budget for the
okay,
meals.
Yeah,
And this has been confirmed by conversations with comparable positions in other types of similar institutions.
yeah.
The majority of them have contracts with the large food service company providers. They're essentially members of a national group,
Yeah,
and those contracts require that the nursing home, the school, the hospital, whatever, purchase, depending on the contract, a minimum of 80%, in some cases up to 95% of their food budget through those national distributors. So, $750,000, right,
Yep.
a year.
well, that's this year, I don't know what it's been in the past.
All right, but let's just take
Yeah,
that number.
Yeah,
Let's say 3/4 of that is how much? Or take 80% of it.
$550,000.
Okay. So then you'd have at most, generally speaking, 20% of it available for non-contract purchases?
Well, that's not right.
So it's gonna be, I don't know, what's the number?
$600,000 is 80%.
Okay,
So now take, what's the change?
So it's
150,000.
150,000,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And that's but generally speaking, most of these contracts require you to have 95%.
Yeah.
So what is the actual number that is available to spend on local food? It becomes very small.
well, $160,000.
No, much less than that.
I thought we said 80, oh, you said if you
I'm
use
changing it.
90% rather than,
Or 95%, if they have to
Okay.
spend 95%.
$71,250.
Right.
okay.
Calculator.
That's the Cisco's of the world.
That's correct.
Yeah.
But one of the things that the nursing home and the schools get from that is by being a member of a group, it's like a buying club,
Uh-huh.
they get in that huge aggregation of, purchasing power. It really cuts their costs. And that's one of the things that these facilities must do. They don't have unlimited funds.
Yeah.
They have very strict budgets. As much as I'd like to see the local food go, there are times it just, it's very difficult to do. Very difficult.
Okay, Sandy.
I know, it's sad.
All right, is there anything else? If not, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the said motion.
Okay, said
And
motion.
I will second it.
Said- all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
And nothing's really changed there, has it, Mark?
No.